Dear colleagues and friends, welcome to Prelude, an interview series about opera by Atelier d'Excellence in collaboration with David and Francisco Salazar from Operawire. Today's episode is hosting a bel canto legend and one of the most versatile artists of our days, soprano Miss Nelly Miricioiu. Welcome, Maestra.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much
We
for
are very
having me.
honored. Our pleasure, our honor.
Yeah.
The first question for today belongs to my colleague, Sunny Boy Dladla. Please, Sunny Boy.
So,
Okay.
in Romanian, you will say bună seara.
Bună seara.
Yeah. So, I guess we share a lot in common. I just want us to go back a little bit in the past. I come from South Africa, where we had to go through a difficult time, which is very sensitive for both of us. I think we have an understanding on that. We had to overcome apartheid, and in Romania, you had to also overcome communism. So I guess my first question is, as a young artist coming from that time, it must have been really not easy for you. How difficult was it to be an artist during that time, and how did you manage to get to the UK?
How long do we have? First of all, I want to say that my husband has had his first baby, not with me, in South Africa, but unfortunately the baby passed away. And he is still there in, I can't remember exactly the place they were, but they lived in South Africa.
Cool.
So he's been talking to me about the politics and history, and he always wanted to go back, but unfortunately we all get older and it's not that easy.
Exactly. Yeah.
As regards for me, I don't know, maybe I was a little bit more unfortunate, because lots of people say, oh, I don't understand why you went through so many troubles. As a child, as an artist, first of all, you have to understand that in a communism, you have to know you are nobody. You cannot be anything special. And I was a prodigy, so it was hard to deal with the balance between me feeling something special and yet everybody else in school, in kindergarten, to say, no, you're not that special. So on top of that was situations where my dad was working for what we call militia. It's a municipal police. And my mom was the real artist. And when she was pregnant, she wanted to have a daughter, and she decided it has to be an opera singer.
Oh, nice.
So my name comes from Nelly Melba. So I was quite kind of predestined. Oh. And I was about 5 years old, and my mom was singing amateur, but was singing. And she lost the voice just before the concert. And the little me, 5 years old, says, I can do it, no problem. Yeah. And they put me on a chair, and I remember they still have the accordion. And he wanted to play a joke, so he started a different song. And I looked at him and I went, what do you think I am? And that was my start in reality, because radio then came and did recordings. And Mama from there, of course, kept on being convinced I am an opera singer. And indeed, I was singing always things that were much more ahead of me. But one example of how difficult it was, when I was 5 years old, I sang a song that my mom taught me. And the song had a text that said, I have one mother and one God. The next day, my father was thrown in prison because he was not permitted to have religion. And he was not, how can you teach your daughter things that don't exist in the communist, and many things like that have happened. So when I was about 14, I was invited to sing in the television, and it was amazing. It was transmitted abroad, and the TV was doing. I'm translating. That's why I find it a bit difficult. Small talents, big, small children, big talents. It was kind of like that. Came back to the school, and the school was determined to put me down and to teach me a lesson of you're nobody. So they invented some absences in school, and if you had 40, you were obliged to repeat the class, because that's another system in communism, where if you don't have the grades that they need to be minimum 5, because we have from 1 to 10, then you don't pass and you go to the same year. So you are older with younger kids next to you and repeating, and that was pretty humiliating. So they managed to invent these absences, and they threw me out of the school for 3 days. But that was the time when it only twice my dad interfered and helped me and used his position, because he was an important man. And he went to the school and said, "You're not doing this to my daughter, because I will do something that you will not be happy about it." So they took me back, but I was always, they tried to build a personality that doesn't have this artistry. And I always had this temperament. I was very bubbly, and I didn't understand the differences, because Mum was always trying to insert the love for royalty, the love for music, beauty, ballet, theatre, you name it. I started French very early, which was not a communist thing, because that's very much bourgeoisie. So there were lots of difficult things. Myself, I was retained in prison for an anonymous letter that had nothing to do with me. That's just little histories of how you survive in these situations. And of course, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I was always that type that my mom from behind always said, "You go through that door or else." And that or else was not an easy one. So I learned to survive. And I always said, if communism was positive in any way for me, it taught me how to survive in a world that was not easy when I came either, because I came with nothing in my pocket. I didn't speak English. I spoke only French at the time. I learned Italian later. And I still remember one of the times that I found an apartment in London, and I found out that they were not the right environment for me. And I took all my luggages, and I ended up in the street waiting for somebody I knew from the opera house to take me and help me. The same thing happened when I was in Paris, and I did a competition which I won. And my mom would have money to pay a flight to go to Paris, but to come back, it had to be by train. But my train to come back was within 1 day. The hotel was paid by the competition, but they refused to pay for the extra day. So again, I ended up on the streets with a suitcase crying. And it was a passing by lady who was just chatting to me, turned up to be a lady from the chorus. And she took me to her apartment where I stayed for overnight. It's not an easy life when you are an immigrant, and when you have to break it. That's why I said, how long do we have? There is so many stories around. Communism is it's a good concept, but it's not a nice system. When people get their hands into power, we all are human.
Yeah.
It just happens by magic. You kind of change. I always compare to the pedestrians and drivers. If I'm driving, I'm cursing the pedestrian. If I'm a pedestrian, I'm cursing the driver.
Yeah.
So it's a human approach to all the things. When I moved from Iași and I moved to Bucharest, I had to go around different cities with different operas, because it's another system in communism. You can't control where you go. They control. They send a map at the end of the conservatoire, and it's only certain positions, not as a soloist. It doesn't happen that fast. So you get certain positions as a teacher, mostly as a teacher. And then after that, it's a longer story. But then it's the map, you have the places. And I was head of my generation, so I had a choice. But the choice was not really a choice, it was pretty poor where I was supposed to go. So the system, what happened is, when you get there to that place you chose, you have to obtain from the director of the school a letter to say, no, we don't need her. But this director, and by the way, by now, I was already in Maria Callas' competition, winning the Grand Prix, and also the Francisco Viñas, winning the second prize, but the first was, no, sorry, Francisco Viñas was first prize. Was another one that was, Genève was not a first prize, because it didn't exist, but I had the second prize. So when I did I was already thinking I'm having a career. And the director said, oh yeah, but we need good teachers. But I said, I want to sing. Well, I'm very sorry. And that was the second time when my dad called his colleagues and threatened them. And of course, that was probably the few benefits I had from a communist system. And they gave me a no. And as a result, I could audition somewhere, which was Brasov, beautiful theater. And it started with operetta, but they promised they would give me opera, and they did. So I did my debuts of Traviata and Bohème in that place. But people were not very happy with the fact that me, young, just freshly coming out of conservatoire, they were there in the chorus waiting for that position, for them to go to become soloists for such a long time. And that's where the anonymous letter came from. So I do hope it responds a little bit to your question. It was not easy. It took me years to find balance. I came to the West, and in a way, in London, I emigrated via Philippines.
Wow.
I was in Manila in a concert, and I didn't intend to emigrate. I wanted to sing and travel and bring the name of Romania. I'm very proud of being Romanian, and bring it back to the house. But now I was having so many problems. And when I got to Philippines, sorry to say, although I must say I enjoyed very much, I became a very good friend with Imelda Marcos.
Wow.
So I'm sure some of my fans that are very young, they don't know who Imelda Marcos was. You go to the Google and find out. And she didn't give me any shoes. And I was treated like a princess. It was amazing life there. And literally, I woke up, and I'm very honest on that, I woke up in the morning and I thought, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going back. That's it. I've had enough. Well, that was costly, because when I had to come, I had already a contract of Traviata and Scottish Opera. And when I had to come to that contract, England said, nah, you're not coming. We know why you're coming. And it took a long, long time to, I got a letter that was not necessarily official from the Philippine lawyer to say that I will be welcome back to the Manila. And that was the only way England allowed me to come to England. And then I came to do the Traviata and Scottish Opera, and the rest is history, so to say. It was political asylum.
Oh, that's beautiful. I find it very interesting that even back in the day, you had to go through what we, also the new generation, are going through. This is so amazing, and thank you again. You've answered my question perfectly. I couldn't have it in the other way.
Pleasure.
I did want to just ask just follow up on that, on just getting political asylum. Were you ever able to go back to Romania and be able to sing there, or was that never happened?
Oh, well, I didn't want to go to Romania, but yes, I was in danger because it was a political asylum.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, when I was singing in Covent Garden, it was my debut. I had a little apartment in London, in central London, and unbeknown to me, just under my apartment was the military attaché of Romania.
Oof.
And they came to my apartment and they tried to convince me to go back, and they were on my footsteps for a very long time. But eventually they realized that it was a lost cause. And then they did something quite nasty, that was he was trying to get me on a bad relationship with the British, but then the British, they understood there was just a kind, because I was a political asylum, they realized it was just a put on story like they always do. And I didn't go back for 17 years. Then interesting is that was exactly the time I was in Metropolitan doing Bohème, which was my debut. And it was very successful, and I was so full of myself and excited, and I was, oh my gosh, I was, having Bohème in Metropolitan. And my agent called and said, the Romanians, the president of Romania wants to have you in the contract. And I completely forgotten that I don't want to go. I was so excited, and I said, of course I'm going. I put the phone down, and I'm going, oh, what have I done? Because I didn't have the guts to go back. It was so much haunting me. It was just too much to bear. But I did go. But I put a condition in there that I don't want the general public to be allowed. So they were political guests. I didn't want to see faces. I knew they were still there. And they were faces I didn't really have joy from. Still, I was doing the rehearsal, and I heard the concert maestro behind me, because I was singing Semiramis, and I was singing obviously my bel canto. And I heard her behind me in quite rude words saying, I'm really not interested on this rubbish. She was much stronger than that. I wanted to do my symphony. And I had tears coming down. And my husband didn't understand what is going on, but he understood something is wrong. And he says, we go home now. And of course, the survivor in me said, no, I am not giving up. And I never did. I was never a quitter in my life.
Yeah.
And I stayed, and the president was incredibly happy and came backstage to see me and say hello. and the concertmaster came to apologize. So that was the only time I went back to Romania until I became friends with our royal family. And they were doing a lot of charity work for Romania. And I was desperate to do some charity work. And we started to collaborate. And when they were back in Romania, I went with them. And we did different activities, but it was only for that reason. Otherwise, I find it very hard to go back, although slowly. But this was again because I was so admiring our actual Queen Margaret. I was so admiring their strength of going over the past and still smiling and still wanting to do something for the country, that I thought, well, little me has to learn. And I learned. And I learned to have to find love again, even for the people who were doing wrong. So yes, I have been to Romania a few times.
Very inspirational.
Yeah.
Great. Maestra, let's go to a little bit more pleasant part of the early stage of your career. At that time, in these early stages, you were called the competition horse. You were winning one competition after another. And watching your performances through the video that we have available now, it seems that your singing and your high notes sound so natural and effortless. Was mastering your technique an easy path? And did you face technical challenges, and what did you discover through these challenges?
The first competition I've done in my life, I was 22 years old, and I went, it was Barcelona, Francisco Viñas. And it was quite amazing because my mama made me the dress. See, in communist system, it's a bit like in China, when you have one dress, everybody else is having the same dress. And that was exactly and mama wanted me to be the artist, I'm not like anybody else. I am special. She was, trying to insert in me that sensation. And she made me this beautiful dress. The problem was when I went to Barcelona, again, because in those days, communist country was always accepted, and they paid for us. We only paid the journey. So I had the airplane, I went there, and mama gave me a lot of tins of food, which I carried in my suitcase. I had nothing else to carry in my suitcase, and the dress for if I win. That was for the gala. And I didn't know that the weather was so hot in Barcelona at the time. I had no fridge in the hotel. It wasn't a luxurious hotel. I used to take the food from breakfast to take it in my handbag to be able to eat something through the day. So I lost the food from the suitcase. I didn't have food through the day except the breakfast, and I lost 10 kilograms within almost more than a week. So the dress that mama made, it looked on me like a piece of rag. It was terrible. And why I'm saying this, because it was the first time when the paper said, oh, golden voice with a perfect technique. I knew nothing. For a very long time, I knew nothing. I was just blessed with things that were natural there, and other people, because in bel canto, all the books that have been written are because people were observing people with gifts, and that's how they came to the conclusion, this is how technique is right. This is good, it's a positive one, except for when you lose it, because you don't know how to go back. And that is a little bit harder to find your way to understand what you got from God. But it kept me that natural gifts for a very long time. So it was frightening in a way, because I really went on stage and I didn't know if the E flat would still be there or not. So I was terrified, also because I didn't know how to vocalize. It, to me, was completely waste of time. So for me, it was either I sing or I don't. And it was hard. And yet, all my competitions that I won 10 of them, all international, I was always singing Anna Bolena, Hernani, Lucia, what was the Traviata? Of course, Traviata was my. So it was not easy program, because I believe that competition was quite a lot of people around. You either shock them from the beginning till the end, or forget it. So I see people sometimes they build through, and I'm not a build through. I'm either I do it or I don't.
Yeah.
So yes, my first one would be Anna Bolena, for example. I will not go with an easy part with Cabaletta. So that's how I won all those competitions.
Which is a role that even established sopranos are afraid of, right?
Yeah.
That's quite fascinating that you did something like Anna Bolena and then something like Lucia, which are generally thought of as for two different types of voices. Anna Bolena being a much heavier, as Maria said, a role that a lot of sopranos are scared of, and Lucia, which is sung more these days by a coloratura. So I find that to be really fascinating how you were able to balance those.
That's a very interesting point you're making, because it's very true. The one thing that we forget in history and bel canto, and looking back into generations before us, soprano or a tenor, by and large, they sang almost everything. And it was not necessarily wrong. It was just, you always had to sing what you sing with your voice. So if I was Lucia, but you sing with your voice because the score, it's teaching you how to do that. Not because I try to manipulate my voice into a lyrical higher sound or more dramatic sound. It's just, if I read totally the score and the character, the sound is there already. And it becomes more, it just sits naturally in a particular way. All I need is to acknowledge that and to learn from it and to be able to repeat it. So for that reason, I was never afraid to do Nabucco or Macbeth or things that were much stronger, because I still did it by the book with the bel canto. And I've always had this kind of head voice that carried. So as long as I was in the character, I wouldn't put, because Anna Bolena is not a dramatic soprano. It's not even a dramatic coloratura. It's a lighter approach to it, because all you have is accents in the bel canto. And the bel canto teaches you in such a healthy way to approach the drama, mainly because the orchestra is not so heavy. But that's another point of view, that people don't want to do bel canto because they think it's boring. Because it's not so much in the orchestra. It's only the singer, God forbid. How could the singer be a diva? So, you know. So for that reason, that didn't disturb my voice. However, my speaking voice was my enemy. I don't know what I was doing in those days, but I kept on losing my voice speaking.
Wow.
So I was completely silent in between performances, which was heavy for me, because you see, I'm very bubbly and expansive, and I wanted to communicate with people. I want to talk, and I couldn't. So the only time I was doing it was just on performances, and that became a little bit too intense. So I had to find another way to lighten up. I think people should learn how to adapt, how to adjust to an international standard. Because a lot of singers come from abroad and they just do it their way, and they're trying to make it in that way. But there is an international taste where people have to like you. So I did a lot of videos and pictures, and sometimes I will look at the picture thinking, you like that woman? Oh my God. So I had, and of course, because of this bone structure, I had to work much more to make it a little bit more charismatic. And I knew temperamentally I can make myself charismatic, but it had to be physically as well. But no, I don't believe it's more dramatic. Don't forget that at 14 years old, I was singing opera. I had 3 octaves at the time, and I was singing from contralto to very high Lucia notes. And I've always had the facility, so much so that once in London, one of the critics, it was a negative critic, who said, when is she stopping to be a chameleon? But being a chameleon kept me healthy. So I kept, when I knew how to shift the registers when I needed drama, and I was using mixed sound. I was not afraid of chest voice, but it's mixed, not raw chest. And I had the capability to make this middle voice warm and fleshy enough for what it was needed for that Anna Bolena. And yet in Lucia, I didn't sing many Lucias, and thank God I didn't. I'm not a Lucia. I don't envy all these Lucias, because Donizetti was cruel. He built a very dramatic Lucia, and then he expects you to be a birdie up there taking off and flying. Although he didn't write the cadenza, so that's fair enough. And original, it's a semitone higher. And I know Monserrat Caballé tried to do that in La Scala, and she said, never again. It's hard, it's much harder, much harder. So it's a beautiful opera, but I don't want the cadenza.
And to follow that question, you know, you're very well known for your bel canto repertoire. When did you realize that this was the repertoire that fit your voice? And what are the keys to singing bel canto in the most healthy way?
Thank you. You all have very interesting questions. Thank you very much, truly. No, I didn't know I was a bel canto. In Romania, we didn't speak about bel canto. Not only that, but I was Nicolae Gheaurov. I sang with him his very last contract we sang Iris in Concertgebouw, and shortly after that he passed away. But I still remember that over the palinka, Sonny Boyle probably know what palinka is.
Yeah. Yes, I love it.
It's a very strong alcohol, 50 degrees alcohol. And over the palinka, we had a big dispute where he said, no, Nelly, bel canto doesn't exist. And me trying to say, no, look. And then by the time we had a few palinka, we were friends again.
Yeah. It's quite strong, though, I must say.
Yeah. It's amazing. So, no, I didn't have a concept of bel canto. And yet I was singing all bel canto. If you notice, all the repertoires that I was doing in competitions. No idea about it. It came actually with an invitation from Concertgebouw to sing, what was it? Not Tancredi. It was Tancredi at the time. And I looked at the score, and I'm a pianist. And so I play my music first, and then I sing. And when I looked at the score, I went, there's so many notes. I'll never make it. So I just called them and I said, there's no way. I mean, I didn't know where to fit all of them. It was completely, and yet I was having so much coloratura in my voice. So he said, try it. And I thought, okay, I'll try it. Fit like a glove. And it was more to do with Concertgebouw, which was Mauricio Fernandez and Jan Zekfeld, who's the head at the time of this series, because it was a series of bel canto, as well as Patrick Schmidt, who did my recordings. And they were the two of them that they realized that my potential was in bel canto. So I was given all these new operas. And then, of course, the rest of the world then started to see me in bel canto and obviously engage me into that style. I think that some people have a predilection with the voice to be in bel canto, but I believe it can be taught as well. Because I have learned through 40 years of experience, I've learned that legato can actually be taught in a way that they don't realize, but I do. And I know what to ask, how to tell them how to do the bel canto. Even saying that, even people with voices for bel canto, they don't necessarily understand the style, which for me, it's maximum of discipline. If a note is dotted, you have to have a dot. If it's a 16, it's a 16th. But then you have to also, when they say appoggiare la voce, when you have to also put even if it's a 16th, the vowel has to exist. You can't rush it. So bel canto teaches you a lot if you really want to learn. When you sing it, instead of pretending to have an expression, all you have to do is to do what is written. So everything is in the score that tells you how to do that bel canto. I'm very passionate, as you can see, about that, because I find a lot of liberties in bel canto and things done by tradition and even the coloratura. Sometimes it's sluggish, but just because it's a little fast, people believe, oh my God, what a coloratura. By the way, Sunny Boy, you have a beautiful coloratura.
Oh my God, what an honor. Thank you. I try my best.
I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, what is she talking? Is it me? Is it me? No, truly, you have a beautiful, it's indeed respecting the bel canto and sounds beautiful. I was delighted to listen to your recordings.
Oh, thank you. That's oh my God.
So I'm very demanding on bel canto, particularly also in timing, because if you have Casta Riva, what happens in the orchestra? It goes da 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 di, da da da. The orchestra tends to lose time in the middle, so they go da 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 because they think it's a phrase. But by now, I lost my air. And it's not even written like that. So we had disputes over bel canto. But people they were conductors that they know exactly how bel canto goes. And they have to keep as written. I always said to them, no, I'm not one of those singers. Just go as it's written. I will be there. What I do in my instinctive initially, but after that, because it was my taste, I always knew how to keep the vowel as long as required and not shorter. So just if you have a vowel and if the jaw starts moving towards a consonant, then you lost the vowel. So you have to find exactly the where you put the vowel and where you go to the next vowel. Because you know, lots of teachers say, sing vowels, true. But if you don't know where to put the consonant, forget it. Is that responding to your answer to your question?
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm so like, I just want to listen to you go on and not ask any question. Just tell me more. So, again, I want to go back a little bit. What, just to get the point of view from your side, what differences do you see in the opera business today compared to the time when you started your career? And perhaps I always ask this question about rejection, which I did ask Benjamin. I think it would be much more interesting to hear from you if you've ever encounter any rejection in your career, and how did you overcome it?
First of all, in Romania, I was permanently rejected. Permanently. I was not good enough. My voice was not big enough, etc., etc. In the West, I was lucky.
Yeah.
In fact, they were calling me Nelly Miracle because I was getting all the auditions. But my auditions were not what's happening today. Today, they do general auditions, which I find it so demeaning. I find it so hard for every youngster to go there like you're going, like you're selling kettles, and it's horrible feeling. And of course, the people that are listening to you, they listen with a kind of, okay, another one. They don't even have the taste for what is special, because when you listen so many, when I go into the jury on competitions, there are 200 candidates. After a while, there is a saturation. I can't possibly judge exactly what it should be. Even if it's lovely, you still find something, because I find the concept of auditions today that they think if you are still auditioning, there must be something wrong with you. So they're looking for the wrong. But I love what Anna Pirozzi said. If you prepare well, you have to have your product so well that you look into their eyes and you say, you want this? I'll give you that. You want this? Okay, I'll give you that too. That's how I've done my auditions. Wow. I had it's not an arrogance, it's a dare. Because that's what in the end makes it an artist. Use colors, use different things, but it is harder today also because all the frontiers are open, so you have much more people from the West, and they are pretty good. But they are pretty good, but it's not the finished product for me, because they just have voices, and to have only voices, that doesn't move me at all. So that's for me the difference. In my time, there was an individualism in there. If you have Cappuccilli, you knew Cappuccilli no matter when you opened your... If you listen to Mirella Freni, you knew it was Freni. Or Renata Scotto. There is an identification. But what I'm hearing today, I'm never sure who could that be. I could easily confuse the voices, and that is again because it's a kind of desire from the opera house not to promote divas. It's so misunderstood, the word diva. Yes, maybe they had demands, but then Sunny Boy, you know, and Maria, you know, it's hard to be a singer, and you need that kind of strength which puts you into kind of diva. You know that, Francesco, you've seen it, so many things. And when you talk to them, they're nice people. They're people like everybody else. But that strength of character, you need to build. And this is one of the things I get upset with conservatoires of today, because they create students, but not artists. And I get people at the end of a 5-year academy, they don't even know what appoggio is, let alone what is head voice or what is larynx, or, you know, and I'm thinking something is wrong. And so there's a lot of differences. And the other thing I find it wrong is that the world survives in only few names. I'm curious. I would like to see a younger singer exploring their youth, exploring their enthusiasm, exploring their passion, and breed them. Because that's how singers in the past were. They were bred. I mean, when I came to the West, I was already 29. And I did my apprenticeship back in Romania. At least that was good for me. But rejection can come into different shapes and forms.
Yeah.
You don't have to be rejected all in auditions.
Yeah.
There are rejections within the productions. There are rejections, there are people that they just might take a dislike of you. It's kind of character. And with me, with this character, oh, there were plenty. Promise you.
I can relate.
We had a lot of things. I was lucky that I was good, and everywhere I was doing a good performance, then, you know, they call you back. But it doesn't mean they liked me.
Yeah.
There were people that liked me and people didn't like me. I'm that kind of girl.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But I would advise any youngster to have an incredibly strong attitude and learn very well, learn acting, learn what you're doing, why you're doing it. Don't just go there to win a competition or to win an audition. It's not the point. I've always treated my auditions as a chance to perform. I was, even in competitions, the same. I wasn't thinking, I have to win this. You know, how do you feel you are in La Scala? I'm thinking, I'm not thinking like that. It's not me. I'm happy to do Lucia. I'm happy to have a connection with people. And I don't care. I was even singing in a forest, I'll tell you. It was a fantastic contract, I remember. They paid me lots of money. So
always good.
I had to do Faust, and it was in the forest because the mayor near Boulogne, and I was invited to do the opera because there were lots of people in there who were desperate for opera but couldn't travel to the opera houses.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the forest and seeing people in the trees. They were hanging, they were sitting on the trees. It was 10,000 people. It was unbelievable. And it was one of the most beautiful moments in my life. It was this little girl who came and said, "Oh, I want to be a singer like you." And I thought, "Oh, darling, I love you." So I don't mind where I sing. I really don't. As long as I feel that when I go there, music is respected. And you don't take liberties just to say, "I am the producer, you do this." Oh, that reminds me. I was in La Scala doing Lucia. And I won't tell you the name of the producer. And the producer told me to go. I was coming downstairs this direction, yeah? So he said, "You have to look to see the ghost there." And I went, "Why?" He said, "Because I tell you so." And I went, "No." Not doing it. And I didn't. But that makes it hard. I'm not saying that I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that. But in auditions, respect the score, respect what's written there. If there is an accent, do the accent. And don't sit in front of people and just look into their eyes, because it's dangerous. You may find a lot of disapproval, and then your confidence just goes. I learned in the theater to look at the top of people's heads, because I knew I was in Washington doing Traviata. In the first row, there was a man who was all the time doing, and I thought, "Gosh, this man doesn't like me at all." And there was another lady who came. She said, "Did you see that man in front? Do you see what he's doing?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, he's got a nervous tick." So I learned not to look at people, or I chose to look at the exit lights, the exit fire. It was bright and beautiful, But I love theatre.
Yeah.
I loved films, the black and white films. To me, they were an incredible source of inspiration. Theatres of Shakespeare, I grew up with that. And to me, it was Shakespeare because he was more stylized, and I could understand their movements and their delivery of words. So for me, it was huge to learn. And when I did Lucia, I went to a madhouse. I had a friend, and I had to watch people that are in balance and to observe their movements. For me, it was very important to learn. When I did Violetta, I went for a person and I wanted to know how tuberculosis is manifesting. Apart from the fact that when I was a child, I had tuberculosis myself. So I knew how to bring real life into my parts. And I didn't really think, is my voice beautiful? It bothers me if it's not. It definitely bothers me. And for a very, 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 very long time, I didn't like my voice and I didn't like the sounds. I was more excited if I achieved musically what I was looking for than vocally. And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. Maybe I could have paid more attention. I don't know. But when you go for the audition, don't think about your voice only. Because it's an instrument like everyone's instrument. Make it all part of your entire being, mind, soul, and the body. Because you look at the violinist, they become an extension of their instrument. So why not us being the same? So if I raise a hand, it has to mean something. Not because I need, oh my God, you have to find a reason for what you're doing. I hope I'm answering to your question now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just like, as I told you, I can listen for hours.
And I have to say here that with this attitude, as we said in the last interview with Ben, and in almost every interview, we mention how important it is to stay happy and to keep the joy of a human being. I mean, we shouldn't be suffering in this job because of the auditions and the rejection. So with this attitude, we really stay happy people. We do it also for us, not only to be accepted, right?
Maria, you're very right on that note, because if you don't stay happy, people feel it.
Yeah.
There was a period in my time when I was not happy, and although I sang very well, they didn't make the success because I was passing on my own fears and inhibitions, and they feel what you're doing. And if you notice, not always the beautiful, very beautiful voices will triumph. You will have who is saying more, somebody who says more with what they're doing. It's more accessible to that. But keeping happy, please believe me, it's not easy. The one thing I congratulate myself is that in spite of all the experiences I had, and they were not very pretty, I still have this temperament, and I teach with that because, you can go down. How far down can you go? Then you stop. Then it's your choice. Either you choose to die or you choose to live. And if you choose to live, you may as well do something about it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's a sin. That's all I think.
I must say,
Exactly.
I just love how I've seen you teach, and I know how you teach, and you're not the teacher that always have to find a problem. You always have to find happiness in everything. It has to survive and be fruitful. You have to be happy with the small achievement you get. It's all about happiness. Yes, you've achieved this. Yes, I have a problem there, but that's not the only thing that you need to focus on. There's so many things. And I think if we can have teachers like you, really, the limit is, the sky is the limit for all singers. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. I try in my teaching to insert the same energy, and I go from morning till night, because now in pandemics everybody wants to learn more than ever before, and which is fantastic. And my students will, you know, can tell you, I always try to insert energy, and I always come with something new that will make them feel excited. Because at the end of the day, yes, I have tears, but you know what? I think the strong person is the one who actually goes through tears, goes through the hurt, and still comes up, and you go down again, and you have to keep that going. That fire, you know, some of the children, they are young artists. They say, but how can you motivate? Now we are in pandemic. We don't have auditions. We don't have performances. Everything gets cancelled. Every door is closed. We don't feel, yes, it's true. But there's a question here. Why do you want to be a singer? And I remember reading somewhere, unless you feel you die without it, don't do it. So you always have to ask very strong question. Why do I want to be a singer? Because this pandemic is not going to be to the end of our lives. I hope not. But, and it could be in a month that we resolve the problems, maybe, or in a year. But it's not the end of the world. So for that reason, why not keep myself alive by singing and enjoying, discovering, exploring your voice, exploring your artistry, exploring characters and roles. Why just sit and sulk and say, oh, poor us? I'm you know, being a victim, it's very easy. It's very easy. Being there on the barricades, and it wasn't always easy for me. I remember on one of my diary time, from the beginning, I was always 3 to 5 years in advance. I was with contracts, but then it came a time when I was home for a whole year, and of course I panicked. Of course, what did I do? I kept singing. I kept working, because I knew this is not going to go forever. I knew what the situation was. It was not because of my voice. It was a different situation. But I kept going. And of course, and this is not at the end of my career either. So, and of course, my career just went on again and again. You have to always be prepared for a possibility. If that is your desire, if you want to be a singer in the way I want to be a singer. For me, if I don't vocalize every day, to this day, I can't live. I can't breathe. It needs to have, every morning, it has to be, unless I'm not well, every morning I have to do my vocalist before I sing with the singers. And that, when I teach, also keeps me very fresh on information, because I still have the sensations. They're very fresh on my mind and my throat. And I know, even when I exemplify, I would hate to exemplify with a voice that sounds wobbly, old. It has to be my voice. So I'm pretty ambitious on that way. So I do keep, but that's, you create your own energy, you create your own happiness. I don't expect other people to make me happy, because they can't. Everyone does what they can. Everyone is got his own personality with his own problems. So I can't really put myself into dependable on somebody else. Unless I help myself, it's no future.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much for this. Maestra, before I go to the next question, I have to tell you that we have many opera singers writing in the chat, saying that they wish the best to you and they love you and they are so excited to listen to you saying all these things. We have some younger divas between us, like Valentina Nafornit and Pretty Yen, who are sending messages of love and gratitude to you. So I just wanted to mention that we have many younger opera singers and more established ones
wonderful.
today with us.
And Anna Pirozzi as well, I must mention.
Yes.
Anna
Yes,
is also
exactly.
there.
I'm
Love
sorry
her
I didn't
voice.
mention that. I'm sorry I didn't mention Anna.
Thank you. I want to say hello to everybody and to tell them that I love them. And thank you for the invitation, because it's my only way to get in touch with them. And I give them a big, 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 big virtual hug.
Fantastic. Maestra, as we say, you're a very spontaneous person, and you have been very spontaneous on stage. You are, until today, very spontaneous and dramatic as a performer. And you have admitted that you several times took risk on certain occasions and pushed yourself beyond your limits. So my question to you is, what benefit does pushing our limits bring to us as an artist and as a person? And you also speak very often about an unorthodox element. I would like to analyze it a bit, and you often refer that it pumped you to exceed these limits during performances and in your life. Would you like to speak a little about the unorthodox and the pushing of the limits?
I've always pushed my limits, because if you're honest, if we're all honest, we don't know our limits. So how can I stop and decide this is my limit when it's my decision? I don't know if that is my limit. So based on that principle, I'm not crazy and I don't take unnecessary risks. I do take risks, but I always look for a net. So however small that might be, I will look for it. And pushing my limits is, let's give an example. For example, I did use a lot mixed sound on the lower register. I will go to a show and I will do it on the show. And me, crazy as I am, I learned to look at my own vocal cords. So after I did that, I went to my dressing room and looked at the chords straight away. Because I know the chords will tell me straight away if I've done wrong or right. So I always calculated my risks, and I would recommend to everyone with the right person. Please don't think to take risks just because somebody says, no, just push it further. It's no. You need to trust who you are with to decide how far I can make it, and you do it, and it's trial and failing. It's up to you if you find it's right or it's wrong. And I'm a doer. I'm always a person that you find me trying to find new venues, new ideas, new inspiration. Like I was just watching Anna Pirozzi, and I looked at her doing Roberto de Vereux, and then I looked at her doing Turandot, and it was something fascinating on how she was using her own voice. And I have the same principle of how she builds her voice, and it's wonderful. I mention her because she's young, and it's more of a old school than what I see on the modern school. And I was very pleased to see that we still have people that are carrying the legacy of what I believe bel canto is. And bel canto, as you know, it pushes your limits all the time. You cannot be, and you're very right when you said it was a hard opera. I know sopranos that they lost their voices in the middle of Anna Bolena, because you put so much temperament into, and when you go Giudice Adana, Giudice, and you just get out of your chest, and then you go, and you think, what is my voice? Oh my God, what have I done with it? So yeah, it can be pretty taxing. But it's calculating and working to the last minute. I had a coach with me for 20 years. I used to work with him in the opera, and him. It will be 6 to 8 hours in full voice every day. I didn't lose my voice and I didn't sound tired. But it was a stamina that I was pushing my limits, and you build every day 5 minutes, every day 5 minutes, and you'll feel it. You know, one of the things I recommend to all of the youngsters is try your voice. We all have our little voice inside that knows when it's right, when it's wrong. You just get a little bit taken or infatuated with the teacher that is in front of you, and you assume the teacher knows everything. They don't, they can't, it's not humanly possible. And because you get like that, you go blinded, and then you don't listen to your own little voice that says, maybe this doesn't feel so good. So I always encourage my students to tell me. So we discuss between us what it feels. Sometimes I will say, let's push it a bit further, and then we decide if it's right or wrong. So do try out and try to listen to your own voice, but believe in yourselves. Confidence doesn't come from a teacher. Confidence doesn't come from a producer telling you how fantastic you are. Praises, my gosh, my coach, I used to cry in the lessons, and he would say, what do you want from me? Do you want me to praise you? You don't pay me for that. And I go, okay, I'm good. No problem. It's very, very good to do that. Now, Maria, I'm very sorry, but the reception was not so good when you said about Orthodox. What was that about?
I spoke about unorthodox.
Being unorthodox. Because I thought you were referring to religion.
No. Yeah. This is very personal to speak about it, but unorthodox.
I always, and even on stage, or a producer will give me position, that inside that space of position, I will be very spontaneous and I will have snaps. But it's controlled that as well, in the sense that if I'm singing and if I see somebody falling asleep in the first row, then I do snap something to snap them out. I'm very sensitive to, I can't let people just be. They have to be with me. If they are not, they better go home. So, but in teachings, I always talk about, say I'm an unorthodox teacher. And in fact, I don't even like to be called teacher. I'm more of a master, because I'm taking care of the artist in a complete form. It's language, it's style, it's where to place the voice, how to move your eyes. Because the eyes are the window of your soul. And if you don't know to bring that expression into your eyes, then people just go, okay, next. And I've always had a face that moved. It's not, I didn't invent it. But then after that, when I came to the West, I had very good producers that taught me lots of things. I remember John Copley, who is a fabulous you know Francesca, don't you? He is a fabulous old-fashioned, don't take the negative way, old-fashioned, because he's stylistically correct. And he was teaching me. He said, Nelly, when you sit down, you look at your dress, how it sits, the dress. Because the dress is Violetta, not you. And I thought, my gosh, he's got a point. So, and he would tell me how to have the handkerchief and say, hold your handkerchief and feel it, that it's in your hand. Don't just put it there and forget. And after a while, you remember, oh my God, I've got a handkerchief. So everything has to have a motivation to have that expression. So of course, as a teacher, I'm bringing in the experience I have. And sometimes I say, look, today it's only technique. Then we have to work on the character. But then we go to the character, we lose the technique. So I need to go back. So it has to be. And then after that, I also try to find what they do with their hands. because it's so important to, every finger has to have an expression. You can't just have limp hands and expect to have an expression in that. And so it's much more complex what I'm doing. Also, when I teach singing, I use a lot of little tricks, but they're not really tricks because I know it's a trigger for what I know it's going to work with that vocality. And I don't teach everyone exactly the same. I change because it's a different person. This person understands differently. And I try to understand the person. You have to have a bit of psychology to understand what they can assimilate or take on board. So what I do, I trigger what I believe it should give you a reaction inside your body, because that's where your muscles are to respond to your vocality. It's not by manipulating. I don't put voice in the mask or keep the larynx down. I know all about it, but that's not the point. Because if I put you to put the larynx down and you don't have the level of understanding what it means to do, you're just going to push down your larynx, and after a while the voice sounds old and wobbly. So that's why I'm unorthodox, because I ask them little things that create an effect immediately to react in the body. And one of the things that I struggle with my artists is tongue tension. And that's a very long conversation. And I had to learn about it because I didn't have a tongue tension. That I might have other things, but this was not. So I learned about it, and I looked at books, I look at anatomy. That's another unorthodox thing that I do. And I connect anatomy to the singing only to the purpose of singing, not because I want them to become doctors. So I will not give you the example what I do in unorthodox, mainly because, Maria, if it's taken out of context, my information, then it can be seen a little bit weird.
You've talked a lot about bel canto style. You've talked a lot about, your way of singing. I know you performed everyone from Rossini to Donizetti, even some Pacini and Mercadante and Bellini. And they're grouped, these composers are grouped into bel canto, but they're all very different. So how did you see the styles, and how did you find them? What was similar about the styles and what was different about them? And yeah.
That's a very good question, because everybody treats bel canto as if it was exactly the same. A quaver in Donizetti, for example, it's longer than in Rossini. It's the way you're using the closure of your vocal cords. Sunny, you know about that. Yeah. It's nice to talk in front of people that understand. So that closure is very important, but you need to understand when it goes gentle, when it goes immediately, but when you go immediately, not to have force, not to abuse the vocal cords. So you still have Mercadante. He's very close to Verdi. So, but it has a much longer phrase, and of course, the approach to the attack of the vocal cords, although it's rapid, there is one very, very important information for the bel canto. The vocal cords have to, through the air that you use, you need to sing. So the air already singing into the cords, and then they bring the cords gently together, then you can hit. So that makes a difference between what I would do in Mercadante. When I did the Uriazzi in Curiazzi, I was playing the piano and I was singing, and my husband came in the room and he said, "No, you can't sing that," because it was such a dramatic approach with so many notes in there. And as you know, Grazie is not done in public because their voices won't survive because they don't know how to handle it. One thing is to make an attack of the glottis in bel canto, and another one is to push through that to create an attack of the glottis. So that sounds a little bit more technical, but it's more like when how can I put it? If you just use your palms to clap, you will hurt yourself. If you go, you'll definitely hurt yourself. So you measure that clap, and that clap creates a control within the entire body of your muscles, and you don't hurt. So it's the same with the vocal cords. You learn how to get them together through the air that you make an interval, and the air sings. I know it sounds completely out of anything, but the air does sing. I have between intervals, I have a chromatic scale through my air, because mentally I go into, so I don't attack the top note directly because it hits my chords and it's too dry. In the old days, they used to scoop, or they used to go, so they'll give that glottis. Modern world doesn't do that. But bel canto teaches you how to still have it, but it's not heard. So that will be the difference. And the second, but the most important, is reading the score. They knew exactly what they wanted. If they wanted an accent in a particular note, you have to know that it's not an accent, but it's a kind of it's a kind of leaning into the sound. So it's not so to get strength, it's not about strength, it's about an expression into that accent. And that's how I differentiated them. For Rossini, I remember for Rossini I worked harder than Donizetti. Donizetti came to me quite natural. You give me Midnight Donizetti and I know exactly the style. But Rossini I need to work through, and I need to find my attack for each note. Otherwise I'm going to not hear some of the notes. So I remember when Armida, just to read the score, it took me a month, let alone how it was to put in a voice and then work through. And it's hard because I wanted to know every note what it was. But I had an incredible coach who tormented me, drove me crazy, but he was right. And that's how you differentiate the styles. But it's the same in Verdi. You go to young Verdi, who was much more inclined to have bel canto, and I've done most of the young Verdi, although I also flirted with Macbeth and Nabucco, but in concerts, so not in a performance. I wouldn't even dream. Anna, don't think I'm saying silly things here. Anna Pirozzi's voice is for that, not for mine. And I just look at the score, and even if it's strong, in order to go through the orchestra, it's a squillo that I will use and not color. And that obviously takes me through, but that makes the style. If it's Puccini, for example, I change my kind of breathing, because for Puccini I need to be much wider, to have a larger colonna del fiato, while for Verdi I need to be slimmer, without diet. So yeah, that's how I go through the styles. I read the score, I play the piano, not impeccably because I've lost it since I was in Korea. I didn't have time to do that, but it still gives me a sense of what the music wants. And often I would say to the student, listen how the music leads you into this change of key. Don't allow. There's another thing you have. Let's say you have a D in a minor and a major scale. it will sound different on our vibrations. So when you want to move from let's say from the major into the minor, and yet you're sitting on the note, you have to slightly change the harmonics to enter into the new key. So for us to find our keys, it's not always easy, because people don't learn via harmonics. They learn via projecting voice. And projection can be wrong.
Yeah.
It may work for some operas. You agree with me, Sunny?
I totally agree. You know, everything rings a bell, because Maestro Zeda used to say, sometimes you can have the most beautiful, loud voice, but if you don't use it properly, it won't mean anything. So absolutely, I can relate. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the same goes with the speed. If the composer gave you a number of the tempo, you shouldn't go any faster, but you should go very egal as well, to have the spread of the music. Even if it says ritenuto or rallentando, you should never do it to hold one note, because it's a bit, I remember my time, conductors like Patané, for example, he would go, are you finished? Because they were making a joke. It was ridiculous to hold a note. One note doesn't mean much. But what I was trained to do is to dissect, to double the bar, and then slowly, keeping the same value, you just go slower, but so much so that when the note comes, it gets its own time. And it is longer anyway, but not to the, it's not me that I want to triumph. If I make the music triumphant, then I am triumphing as well. So I don't need to go for cheap effects. That's my position.
Maestra, the last question has to do with a younger generation. As we know, you have been a very successful voice mentor at the Jet Parker program of the Royal Opera House in London, in various master classes and also privately. Which are the principles that you wish to instill in your students? And what kind of stimulus do you feel that is needed for today's young artists? I read somewhere that you stated that you feel that the young generation lacks curiosity, that the older times with a lot of difficulties like communism and like poverty, and that the modern world doesn't have, so that they don't have this curiosity. So what do you do to help them?
I remember two things. One that's usually said, a full stomach can never understand an empty stomach. And it's very true. If you don't have your own experiences of sadness and difficulties, and it can be a little bit harder to create. But then I don't believe anybody is, unless it's Donald Trump, I suppose, I don't believe anybody can do. They're going to kill me for this one. You just call up the door.
Yes.
You find your unhappiness.
Oh God, that was funny.
I'm sorry.
We became it political, so.
No, take it out.
No, it's just a joke.
No.
I'm sorry.
So no, I try to tell them. I try to ask them. For example, you're hurt in love. You can learn from that experience. We're not always successful from the beginning, are we? So there is experience in there. Or you've been treated badly by your teacher in school. There is an experience. So take the things that are small, but you don't look at them as being part of your inspiration. You had flu. You know how you feel when you're ill, how you feel in your chest. So take it if you need for, let's say you are Mimi. And then you know that when you you cough, you have to be like this. In technique, you can't let your sternum sink. Of course, it's true. But then from out shell, I can still go in front of me, and I don't need to collapse my sternum. So there are ways. So that's what I try to show to them. Also in the music itself. If you go, si mi chiamano mi, yeah, because I'm saying, but. So you have to remember, because you must have talked to somebody, you talk and say, but wait, tell him, it's an experience. Observe on everyday life, what can you take as an experience? You see a beggar in the streets. Look at his body. You can give him some money as well. But look at the posture that he has, and you can incorporate it into how you're singing. When you feel you have a role that it's a bit into that kind of personality. Or if you see pride, look at the Queen. And then you know how this body is much more sitting out there, and you learn about it. The one thing that you have to remember is that you have to put all these things like pearls in a necklace, and it goes one by one, one by one, one by one, and each pearl tells a story. So it's in your hands to have that kind of inspiration, but you have to create it by yourself. So when you say curiosity, it's really being aware where you are, what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're treated, or how you treat people. It's respect for you and for everybody else. And when you are aware, you can also be ready to help if you can, or if the moment allows you to do that. And that's what humankind is supposed to be friends and loving and careful with each other. I think we lost a little bit the friendship in the real sense of the word. In Romania, one of the beautiful things was that, and probably in South Africa is the same, because you speak to your neighbor, you cook something and you bring it to the neighbor, you share.
Absolutely.
I don't like my food if I don't share it.
Yeah.
Just for myself, I'll cook just beans. I don't care. But if it's shared, oh yes, I like the steak, I like the chips, and I like many, many other things. Yeah. So it's not, we have to remember why we are human beings. And the youngsters, they just wait sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes they only went to be fed, spoon-fed, as they call it. And you have to find the spoon yourself. You have to find the food yourself, and to try to feed yourself, because it's much more interesting and it gives you more inspiration to what you want to do with life. To me, life is a gift, and I shall fight for deserving to be alive until I go. And you don't need to be tested to realize how beautiful life can be. And I know there is no money. I know there is a lot of no contracts. I was just about to have a fantastic audition before the pandemic. Look what the pandemic is doing to me now. Use it for reflection. It's no money. You know what? You have an amazing system here in the West, where they do give you some help on when you are. Oh, my dog. She just decided to go somewhere onto the wire. So you can find a way. You can go and wash dishes. You can go. I have done it, so I know what it means. I'm not saying it just as a you know, the diva has found a way of getting herself popularity. It's literally finding any possibility to earn your existence. Move back with your parents, even if you don't like them. Daniel moved with us. I don't know if he likes us, but he moved with us back. So I just want to show you my little killer. There she is.
Hello.
So everybody can see my little companion.
Yeah.
When I teach, she sits always next to me on a mat. And she vocalizes with me, actually. She has a fantastic voice. And then she sits in front of me and she looks at me saying, "Do you like it?" So, you know, Maria, I'm a great preacher for trying to find ways. And somebody said to me, "I don't believe in problems, I believe in solutions." And that was a wise saying. We have to create something that we are very inventive. Just try to experiment. The more you open a door, you get more doors open.
Yeah.
And experiment with that.
Actually, from what we heard about your whole life and your career, you're a live evidence. I mean, a live evidence that this is true, that there are no problems, there are only solutions. You solved all the problems that you have that were major, and you prevailed. You overcame them.
I try, and I love people. I love my students, and I'll go to bed with the thought of how can I help more for the following day. I'm not being a teacher. I learned a lot about ego and pride, because like any artist, I have my ego and I have my pride. But when you are a teacher, you have to remember it's not quite like that. So I learned about that as well. I will remain for my life a master, but a student as well. I need to learn from them if I'm ever to be good enough to give something to them back.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a really delightful experience having you with us today. For me personally, having watched your Tosca when I was very, very young, it is the fulfillment of a life dream today. So it was really great. Guys, Francisco and Sunny Boy, my valuable colleagues, thank you so much. Would you like to say something to Miss Miricioiu as well?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time and for believing in the future of the young generation that is coming up, and to believe on the project that we're doing with Maria and also with Operawire. Really means a lot, and many blessings to you.
Thank you very much, Nelly. This was wonderful, and definitely, I know, even if I'm not a singer, I learned a lot. Just as being an artist, I relate extremely to what you were saying, and thank you so much for giving us the time and your knowledge and your experience, because that is truly important. And I think a lot of young singers and up-and-coming artists will also learn a lot from what you have to say.
Just want to say thank you for your questions. It allowed me to share a little bit of my experiences and to have a voice, not just singing. So thank you for your questions. And of course, thank you for everyone who is out there. And remember, I love you all.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was an honor. It was an honor to have such a classy lady of the opera, as we called you when we announced the interview. We believe that, and it's the truth. And we wish you all best for the weeks ahead and for your life and your beloved ones. And of course, at this point, I would like also to thank your assistants and the wonderful mezzo-soprano, Miss Hannah-Lisa Kirchen, for making this happen today. So
thank you.
Thank also to Hannah-Lisa. Thank to everybody that attended today, and stay well, stay creative and optimistic, as Miss Miricioiu said today, until we see you again very soon at Prelude. Ciao.
Oh.